one and all, and listen to tales of excitement and adventure. Tales of daring heroes, savage monsters, and bards who just couldn't keep it in their pants. Tales of friendship, nobility, drunken foolishness, and unforgettable fun. These are tales of role-playing games, fair listeners, and this is Rollin' Bones. My name is Ryan Howard, and I shall be your guide.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Rollin' Bones with Ryan Howard, your RPG treasure trove. I am your host and king of the boneheads, and tonight we are going to be talking a little bit about how to run a campaign where the characters are evil. The player characters, that is. We're talking about an evil campaign. I'll put it in quotes, like I did in the media for all of this, and the title that I put out on Twitch, Evil Characters. And there's a reason for this. There's a reason why I put that in scare quotes, if you will, to use that media term, which we'll get into. We'll definitely get into that. Just taking a sip of my lemon water here. And before we start anything, real quick, I just wanted to shout out a former guest on the show, a guy who was on just a couple weeks ago, Jim Wampler. He sent me the first two issues of, here, I'll hold it in this hand so you guys can see it, Scientific Barbarian, just, for free, for me to, take a look at. And it's always cool when people send me free stuff. I like it. Who doesn't like that? Especially when it comes to, RPG books and stuff like that. It's never expected. It's always appreciated. And, thank you, Elfie. Boris is still a work in progress, but I will finish that one at some point this week. But yeah, it's never expected. It's always appreciated, and it's always, cool that someone is willing to, send me their work to look at. Because it's their work. And, you want to support people in the work that they're doing. You want to give them money for their troubles, for, everything that they went through to, put these books out there for people, and to support their, their work. So stuff like that, I like to buy books from people, but, when they send them to me for free, it's great as well. And, I, like Elfie said in the chat, she literally brought this to me just a few minutes ago. It was in the mailbox today. Have not looked over it. At some point, I will do a review of these issues. What that's going to take is me playing Mutant Crawl Classics, which I'm planning on doing in Texas. So, actually, I am signed up for at least one, if not two, Mutant Crawl Classics games in Texas. So, yeah, I will review those after I've had the chance to actually sit down and play a little bit of Mutant Crawl Classics. So, now that I've, thanked Jim for the cool stuff that he sent me, we'll get back to the subject of, tonight's show, that being evil campaigns, evil parties, evil characters. And to let you guys know where I'm coming from here, there are 3 main YouTube videos that I watched. I'd watched them before, some of them multiple times. Actually, I think all of them multiple times. And these are what I consider to be the 3 kind of definitive takes on evil characters from 3 of my favorite RPG content creators. So the first one is from Noah Antweiler, aka the Spoony one, for those of you who remember his time as the golden boy of the internet when he did that show Counter Monkey, just about, telling RPG stories. That was the series that got me into RPGs, and I've talked about this a few times. I know that Noah Antweiler has become a very controversial figure on the internet, and I understand why. Dude definitely has some demons, but he's the reason why I even started playing this game in the first place. I was a fan of his content, so that I owe him that much. But he made a video in the series called So You Want to Be Evil. And the main thrust of his argument was you shouldn't play evil characters in RPGs. I'll address that in a little bit, but that's kind of the main viewpoint that he's taking on evil characters. Next up, on really the opposite end of the spectrum, from that conclusion, you've got Matt Colville's Running the Game number 65 on being an evil character, in which, the thought process behind that video started with Matt Colville tweeting out that there should be more explicitly evil player characters in D&D. I disagree with that. Actually, I strongly disagree with that. I'm not opposed to evil characters. Again, cover all of that, but I don't think there needs to be more. That's opening the door for some craziness. And then somewhere in the middle of these two takes, really not so much giving his philosophy on whether you should or should not play an evil character, but rather, telling people how to think about playing an evil character and how an evil character would work with a party. You've got Seth Skorkowski's How to Play Evil Characters RPG philosophy video. I love all three of these creators. Seth Skorkowski has been on the show. Great guy. Love his stuff. Someday I hope to have Matt Colville on the show. And I don't think Spoony does appearances on other people's shows anymore. But if he wanted to, I'd be down to have him on. So that's just kind of where I'm coming from as far as this topic is concerned. These are the main schools of thought that I have looked at personally when it comes to the topic of evil characters. So from here, I want to preface some of the problems with my own scenario that I've set up here, because I'm a philosophy major and we overthink everything. So I named this stream How Ryan Would Run an Evil Campaign. So I've got to go ahead and address the problem that I personally have with any kind of mono-alignment, race, class campaign where everyone is playing the same type of character. So a campaign where everyone goes, hey, we all want to be evil, or we all want to be dwarves, or we want an entire party of barbarians, or an entire party of wizards, on down the line. Entire party of magic users. Even as broad as an entirely martial party or an entire party of casters, I personally will have some problems with. From the player side, I often find myself in a situation, since I'm usually behind the screen, when I'm on the other side, when someone is saying, hey, let's do a campaign, you've seen the memes of, there's a great meme from SmackDown, from WWE SmackDown. One of the female wrestlers, Billie Kay, she's been doing this weird gimmick where she's trying to find a new tag team and she's passing out her resume to all of these different established tag teams. And someone took an image of her handing a resume to a tag team and said, someone in the party, I'm thinking about running a D&D campaign, and then it was that picture, and then the current GM, here's the character I want to play. That's where I typically fall when it comes to playing games. I think about all these different characters I want to play. You guys have seen me make characters on the show before. We'll definitely be doing more of that, by the way. But I usually have an idea of something I want to try. And it is almost never what everyone in the party wants to do if they want to do a mono party. People are... It's my dumb luck, really. I think about this character that I want to play, or this type of character I want to play, and someone goes, let's do a party where... The one time it was suggested that we do a mono party, I think they wanted to do all Ganassi. And you guys have seen the types of characters that I create. I typically stick to human, elf, dwarf, with a strong leaning toward human. I've considered other races. I don't know why I stick with humans, elves, and dwarves. Hell if I know. But that's typically where my tastes lie. So I'd given absolutely zero thought to ever playing a Ganassi. And when it was explained to me, I was like, that sounds weird. And I was kind of like, sure, I guess. I was not thrilled with the idea. It didn't come about. It didn't come to fruition. Because the GM was like, I don't want to... The GM for that game was like, I don't want an all Ganassi party. And I was like, I don't want to play a Ganassi, so here's my elf character. And it worked out well. But yeah, when it comes to any of that stuff, even, getting back to the alignment question... What you're doing is you're limiting the variety of characters that can come to the table. Because at some point, sticking specifically with what we're talking about tonight, evil characters, you've got 3 choices that kind of inform what sort of evil your character embodies. And there's variety within those choices, but you're either playing lawful evil, neutral evil, or chaotic evil. And even the variants within those 3 categories, there can be a lot of similarity, a lot of overlap. And with, a limited number of players at the table, decent odds that someone is going to come up with the same concept as you. I played in the first time I played with my Wednesday group, I came in with a character who was a half-elf, 2-weapon fighting ranger. And then someone else came into the group, completely blind, playing a 2-weapon fighting elf. They were a rogue, but still, two slashing weapons, pretty much the same thing as my character. And then Shag, who I would love to have on the show someday. He's working on a game right now, and when that's ready for hype, I'm gonna see if he wants to come on the show with his designing partner. He showed up, and his character was also a 2-weapon fighting gnome, not an elf, but 2 slashing weapons. So in that party, we had 3 characters that all had the same kind of modus operandi as far as attacking. That's pretty common. Like in my Dark Sun group, organically, we just had 2 scions. They picked 2 different types of psionics, but you had 2 scions. So, with imaginations and things like that, it's gonna limit variety, and at some point it might feel like characters are exactly the same. It limits choices. Which limits kind of, again, the variety that you can have in roleplay. Because if you have a party that's all evil, you're never going to have the opportunity to have the evil characters interact with, good player characters and how they learn to get along. And because of this sameness, you are going to burn out the party pretty quickly because everything kind of feels the same. Playing an all-evil campaign, it's the same thing that I talk about when I talk about running Western games or superhero games. It is an idea that almost never survives past a session 0 environment. Everyone's hyped when they first hear about it because it sounds different. They make their characters and everything's cool, and then you get like halfway through the first session and everyone's already bored with it. So keep that in mind if you're thinking about running an all-evil campaign, or, running... Well, this would be specifically for an all-evil campaign. A bad guys campaign. So that's out there on the table. But let's say, everyone's down to run it, and you guys want to, really make a go at it, really see that you can, get some mileage out of this. Maybe, 3 months worth of sessions. A nice short campaign like that. How do you create evil characters? Why does everyone want to play an evil character? And, what does that mean? So, in talking about evil characters, what I'm going to do real quick is I'm going to share my screen here with you guys, and we'll take a look at the alignment system of D&D and talk a little bit about specifically what it means to be evil in D&D. This might be elementary, but, for anyone who's first encountering this, or first encountering this concept, I just want to, explain everything up front and give you guys a good look at evil within the context of D&D, where it comes from, what it means, all that. So let's go over here to, let's make sure everything's good here. Yeah, so let's go over to screen share and see what we can see. Alrighty. So, here you can see the Wikipedia page for alignment in Dungeons & Dragons. Let's take a look at this real quick. The idea of alignment comes from Michael Moorcock. And a little bit from Paul Anderson as well. Michael Moorcock is the creator of Elric. And Paul Anderson, I believe, is the author of 3 Knights, 3 Lions. Let me verify this. Basically, these are guys from the Appendix. These are guys who very much informed what D&D was, or what D&D became. Did he write 3 Knights, 3 Lions? I might be completely mistaken. Yeah, 3 Hearts, 3 Lions. There we go. Great book. A weird book, but if you want to understand specifically where the idea of, the paladin comes from, it's an important book. But in those books, good, evil, law, and chaos. Good and evil very much come from Paul Anderson, and law and chaos is kind of more the Elric, Michael Moorcock idea. And in the original version of D&D, it was, there were 3 alignments: lawful, chaotic, and neutral. So, just kind of straight out of Elric. In 1977, with the introduction of the basic set, second axis got added in, which is good and evil. And in the middle there, you have true neutral. And this, is carried over into AD&D Second Edition. Third Edition keeps the same. Fourth Edition goes lawful good, good, evil, chaotic evil, and unaligned. They wanted to do their own weird thing. And getting rid of the lawful, neutral, and chaotic aspects of neutrality also felt a little bit weird because, those are important. But basically what this is a role-playing aid. All that your alignment tells you, and it's why I think alignment arguments are stupid, and, why a lot of people are now saying alignment arguments are stupid. It used to be a big deal to argue alignment. That's not really a thing in the community anymore. And the reason why it's stupid is it's just a very general overview of what your character views the world as and what your character holds to as far as laws and kind of the bent of your character, whether they are altruistic or self-serving. They're very broad, very general categories that encompass a lot of different kinds of people. And they really just give you a way to view the world as your character. So if you don't roleplay at all, really this entire episode is irrelevant to you. If you don't roleplay, if roleplaying is not a consideration for your group, you just aren't into it, you just want to go in the dungeon, find some stuff, kill some monsters, get some loot, you're never really role-playing, so alignment only matters in, the purest mechanical sense if, you have, a detect good and evil spell, or you can only use an item if it matches your alignment, or however that goes. So mostly this doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if your party's all good or all evil, if all they're gonna do is just go into the dungeon, kill some monsters, grab some loot, and then go to the next dungeon. So, keep that in mind. Those of you who don't roleplay, because I know not everyone does. Not everyone is into roleplaying, and that's fine. So this is for those of you who are like me and obsess over stuff like this. And to give, again, just a little bit more context specific to the current nature of D&D. I mean, we can go down here and read the Wikipedia explanation of each of them. But let's actually go to the player's handbook and take a look at what it says about the specific evil alignments in 5th edition. So, in 5e, lawful evil. Creatures methodically take what they want within the limits of a code of tradition, loyalty, or order. And it explains devils, blue dragons, and hobgoblins are lawful evil. So, this is you're evil with a code. You are evil with a set of guidelines that you follow. Good examples of this outside of D&D specific, this would be where Darth Vader falls. Darth Vader is lawful evil. He is a paragon of basically the virtues of the Empire and the dark side. Devils, as are mentioned here, when you think about, devils in a hierarchy where, there are lesser devils and all of that, that's lawful evil. If there is a hierarchy that they follow, a law that they follow, some kind of code, someone like a Black Knight would be kind of the ultimate example of lawful evil. You technically following a code of chivalry, but doing so in a very nasty way. Or, the enemy who, he's evil, but if you are, he's not going to fight an unarmed man, so he's going to kill you, but he wants you to pick up your sword and fight him like a man. Then you have neutral evil. This is the alignment of those who do whatever they can get away with without compassion or qualms. That's not a very good explanation of neutral evil, in my opinion. Basically, the neutral evil is pure self-interest. Like with a malevolent streak. Because chaotic neutral is also self-interest, but neutral evil is, basically it's not quite your id is fully in charge. That's more chaotic evil, but, it's purely about whatever you want to do. You're not going to go crazy or anything like that, but, what meets my needs. Neutral evil, I'm trying to think of an example here. I guess Mr. Freeze would technically be neutral evil. He's not lawful. He's not chaotic. He has one goal, and that's to cure his wife, Nora. So, in that way, I would say Mr. Freeze is neutral evil. Basically, this is someone who's driven by one single goal, regardless of, or, a series of goals, regardless of the outcome, would be a neutral evil. And then you have chaotic evil. Chaotic evil is you're basically insane. The way that this is described, creatures act with arbitrary violence, spurred by their greed, hatred, or bloodlust. Chaotic evil is extremely hard to make work in any kind of party environment. And yes, I would do anything to cure my Nora. My lovely kitty, who we've had to bring back from the brink multiple times. So you could say that I have done anything to cure my Nora, short of robbing banks or anything like that. And Elfie has done even more for Nora because she's had Nora longer. But yes, I would do anything for my Nora. Is she still sitting there listening, Elfie? And if so, is she purring? These are important questions. But, anyway, chaotic evil. This is the other cat, Ronan. I'm just kidding. Ronan is neutral evil. But this is like, Carnage, or Harley Quinn, or, the Joker. This is someone who does, by definition, does not play well with others because they're chaotic. This is being purely driven by their id. That's where a chaotic evil creature or character would come in. So, we'll get to why this can be a problem, why chaotic evil in particular can be a problem in a group here in just a second. But that's really what I wanted to show you guys as far as visual aids go. So we'll go back to the big camera. And now we'll keep talking about this. Go ahead and close this down here. So, when it comes to why people want to play evil characters, I made some notes for this episode because I wanted to get my thoughts out here and, hopefully give you guys something a little bit more structured. So, I've kind of divided these up into my hopeful and cynical reasons why people want to play evil characters. Let me start with the hopeful, and then we'll get to the cynical. So, ultimately, the hopeful reason is that they want to explore complex and murky issues of morality with their roleplay. This is someone who wants to find out how an evil character could interact in a world with good characters. How a person who's ultimately self-interested or is following the interests of a malevolent entity, in the case of a lawful evil individual, how can they coexist with people who don't follow the same creeds? If their goals align, how do they go about accomplishing their goals? And what happens when that goal is ultimately met and the players then have to, do they turn on each other? Where do they go from here? If the goal is met, where do they go from here? And so, a good player playing an evil character would think about how their character's goals align with the party. So let's say the adventure, to use the example that I used on Knights and Nerds of Sarkhan the One-Eyed. The goal of the party is ultimately, in this adventure, to overthrow Sarkhan, because for kind of the good and neutral aligned characters, he's a tyrant. Maybe he killed someone's father. Maybe someone is his son, and they don't approve of the way that he's ruling over his subjects. They are an anarchist and want people to, be free to make their own choices. On and on and on. Good and neutral reasons. But if you think about an evil character, how would an evil character fit with that ultimate goal of overthrow King Sarkhan the One-Eyed? Maybe this person was a loyal subject, kind of a hand of the king situation. They did a lot of Sarkhan's dirty work, and he betrayed them. So they want revenge. Maybe they want his throne. They're going to do the exact same thing, but, it's me and not him, so it's better that way. Maybe he's got an item that they want, or they want his wealth, or they want him out of the way so that their master can continue about his dark machinations. But either way, however you look at it, ultimately the goal there is the same. We're going to take out King Sarkhan. And, Lord Dark Annihilator, the anti-paladin, or the, paladin of conquest, are you in or are you out? Do you want to take down King Sarkhan, or, do you even care? And so, the player, if he's a good player playing Lord Dark Annihilator, my fictional paladin of conquest here, is going to think about it. And if he's a good player, like he is in this example, he's probably got some kind of backstory that involves a way in which either Lord Sarkhan slighted him, or his master, because he swore an oath as a paladin, his master wants Sarkhan gone. So, ultimately this good player will go, yes, I am with you in your quest to kill Lord Sarkhan. And they're going, I'm not sure about kill. We just want him off the throne. Well, if you want him off the throne, you should probably kill him. Also, I want to take his place. We'll burn that bridge when we get there. But ultimately, then you have someone willing to at least go that far with you. At least go the distance of, let's get Sarkhan out of there. Now, another noble reason that plays into this, a noble reason to play an evil character, maybe someone wants a challenge as far as roleplay. This goes back into, exploring complex moral issues. Say this person is generally, a nice person in real life. amiable, fun to get along with, perfectly nice, reasonable person. And they just want to see what it would be like to kind of reach beyond that and play a character who's very different from them. A lot of people do that. I play characters who are very different from myself. I like to play badasses. And as much as I may want to be, I am not a badass. So that's I feel that D&D is my fantasy outlet. So I let myself kind of play the tough guy that I maybe want to be or idolize or something like that. And other people will play different characters from themselves as well. Some people will try to play super different characters from themselves. And in these situations, you may find a player who wants to play an evil character. And then the last kind of, noble reason along the lines of exploring complex morality, they're tired of the standard good guy tropes. They don't want to be the knight or the paladin, the cleric, the good wizard, the adventuring bard. They want to be someone with a little bit of grime, a little bit of dirt, not some kind of Tolkien character. They want to go a little bit more the Robert E. Howard route. Play around with someone like Conan or, something like that. Not Solomon Kane. He's lawful good all day. All the way. So those are some of the good reasons why someone might want to play an evil character. Then you have the cynical reasons. And these cynical reasons here are kind of the crux of Noah Antweiler's So You Want to Be Evil video. And that is, typically people who say, I want to be an evil character, want a license to be disruptive. And this is certainly the case in, I'll even say, a lot of cases. They want to play the character who, cuts throats, steals from other players, does all kinds of nasty things, loots, pillages, rapes, whatever bad thing they can think of in their weird, twisted little mind. They want a license to do that at the table with impunity, and they'll often come at you with, it's what my character would do. And, this is someone looking to grab, as much loot as they possibly can, all the cool magic items. They want to steal from their party members. They want to, a lot of times you'll see people like this who want to win D&D. Because there are people out there who want to win D&D, which is a silly statement. But a lot of people think of it that way because they just do. I don't know how to explain it. But that, that's one way that people will, see that they can win D&D. They can have the best, most powerful character who kills everything, even his own teammates, if he damn well feels like it. And basically, Seth Skorkowski calls this person the roleplay terrorist. Matt Colville calls them the Wang Rod. This is someone you don't want in your party. And, even good players can kind of fall into this. They think, I want to be an evil character. And so they're trying to be an evil character. And before they know it, they're all the way back around to just being an evil player. Genuinely, through no fault of their own, they just thought they were doing it right. And a lot of times it just takes a conversation. It's like, hey, I know you wanted to do the evil character thing, but you're being kind of a douche. And if, they really are a good person, they'll be like, oh, sorry, And maybe, they'll change things up with that character, or they'll just bring in a new character because they couldn't handle the responsibility or whatever, but still. Both of these are completely valid views of evil characters. just coming to the table. And in understanding, how we can play better evil characters that aren't just id monsters, that aren't just roleplay terrorists and wang rods run amok, we need to understand a few things about evil itself. And we're not going to get philosophical here too much. Maybe a little bit. Can't help myself. I'm sorry. But there are some important things to understand about roleplay in general, to understand evil characters. The first one is that nobody self-identifies as evil. You are never going to find someone who will say straight up, I am evil. No one self-identifies as evil. And this, in my opinion, comes from the fact that evil is a privation or lack of good. Evil is taking the less good option, or taking the option where the least good can be done. Evil is depriving people of some good. So this is why no one self-identifies as evil. If anything, a lot of evil people self-identify as good. So you need to understand that. Saying, I want to be an evil character is already, you're hanging the sign around your neck saying evil. Whereas no one really does that. Maybe you set your alignment as evil, but your character is your character. Their intentions may be, not great. They may be selfish, driven by their own ambition, rage. They may have a fatal flaw. But they would not consider themselves evil. Also, along with that, evil, for a lot of people, can be a matter of perspective. This is where, again, nobody identifies as evil. Because good and evil are so often determined from a top-down view of things. Now, D&D is a top-down view of things, if you think about it, but when you roleplay to the extent that you do in a game where alignment matters, like it would in an all-evil campaign, evil in that case is a matter of perspective. So from your character's perspective, they're not doing the evil action. They're taking the action that is best for them, or the action that's best for their goals, or the action they think is best for their goals, based on the information they have. So again, if you play your character, I won't say right, but if you play your character intelligently, thinking of yourself as your character for that 3 to 6 hour period that you're playing, if you get to play for 6 hours on a regular basis, God bless you. I remember being able to play for 6 hours, and that was fun, let me tell you. College. Best part of college. The rest of it sucked. But yeah, if you think of yourself as your character, you are not going to be taking the evil action. You're going to be taking the action that is expedient to your goal or furthers your ambition, or whatever it is that's driving you. Which leads into the last point here. Characters good, evil, and neutral are driven by their goals. Where the rubber meets the road as far as good versus evil is that a good character will be willing to sacrifice their lives, their betterment, their, gain, their well-being in the name of helping other people. Whereas an evil character would not necessarily, actually, straight up would not be willing to do that. It's a matter of, self-interest versus altruism. Or, self-sacrifice versus self-preservation. That's really what good and evil come down to in a role-playing game. So, let's say, the dungeon is collapsing. Someone pulled the idol out and the boulder's coming. They forgot to put the bag of sand down, or their bag of sand didn't weigh as much as the idol. And the boulder's coming after them. As they're running, GM calls for deck saves, and everyone but one player makes it. A good aligned character may very well turn around, grab that character, and carry them out of the dungeon. And, if they're successful on their saves and all that, a good GM will give them inspiration for role-playing. An evil character would not turn around in that situation. An evil character would keep running. If not, I don't know, let's change the scenario and say that they're being chased by an Umber Hulk, like in Knights and Nerds. A good character would, kind of go back and try to fend off the Umber Hulk to, recover their comrade and then run, helping their comrade get out. An evil character may very well trip someone to make sure that the Umber Hulk gets them and not him. And, again, if you set this up as a precedent... Actually, no, never mind. I was going to say, if an evil character trips one of the party members, you might want to give them inspiration too, but don't. Don't do that, because that'll create animosity at the table. So yeah, forget that. Don't do that. But still, an evil character, maybe just to kind of preserve, actually definitely to preserve the social nature of the game and not screwing over your friends, who are your friends, out of game, don't trip another player. But if a player falls and you're an evil character, it wouldn't be consistent for you to go back for them unless that person is necessary to your goals, or, maybe your evil character's developed feelings for their character. If there's some benefit to you, then go back, but if not, then your character definitely wouldn't go back. So, with that out of the way, let's talk specifically about circumstances in which an evil campaign would come together. So, how do evil characters, evil people work together in fiction and in real life towards a common goal? What does that look like, and how do you make that into a role-playing game or an adventure? The first thing that comes to mind, the first two things that come to mind, one is, a criminal brotherhood, like the Mafia, or a thieves guild, an assassin's guild, some kind of organizational structure that ties together criminal activity or illicit activity that your players find themselves in. And a separate example that's also kind of a branch off of this would be something like pirates. Pirates. A pirate ship is an evil campaign in a lot of ways. If they're doing real pirate stuff, if they're actually raiding ships and stealing treasure and, terrorizing people and just kind of living to get coin, using that coin to buy booze and affection, and just kind of repeating that endless cycle over and over again. That's an evil campaign. So there has to be in those cases some kind of structure that holds them together, be it the voluntary organization of a pirate ship and a pirate crew under a captain, which works like a democracy from historical examples, or some kind of order, brotherhood, governing body like a mafia, like an assassin's guild or a thieves guild that organizes crime. The other examples that I can think of are the Empire, which again is a hierarchy organizing activity in the name of a common goal, that being kind of the furtherance of the Empire and the Emperor's power, and by extent their own influence and power within the Empire. So let's say you're doing an evil campaign and you're not sure how to tie everyone together. Maybe there is an evil monarch. Let's switch the old situation and say, let's say your party is working on behalf of Sarkhan the One-Eyed. They are going to do his bidding, go into these villages and spread the word that Sarkhan will conquer all who stand in his way. You can surrender now, or we'll be back with an army. Maybe you're raiding the camps of Sarkhan's enemies. There's some kind of government structure that you're working on behalf of that is evil in nature. So, again, a government structure. That's a way that it could work. Then you've got something like, again, to use a professional wrestling analogy, a heel, stable, or tag team. A heel tag team or a heel stable of wrestlers, these are all bad guys, selfish, cowardly cheaters who all are working together. Why are these people working together? In some cases, if you want to look at like Edge and Christian when they were heels, they're best friends. They are basically working together for their own glory and prestige within the world of the World Wrestling Federation. They're goofballs, and they're basically there to make money and have fun hitting people with chairs. And then maybe you've got like more serious factions, like currently in NXT you have the Imperium, led by Walter. And they're basically there to show that technical wrestling is the best wrestling, and they're the best technical wrestlers. And they're there to dominate everyone and show that, they are the greatest of all time, that kind of stuff. That can easily drive a party in this situation. Now, unless you're playing a wrestling RPG, you're not going to be going for the tag team titles and the world title. But in a situation like this, you could have a group of people who are aligned in, we want to gain as much power and money as we possibly can and just kind of live our lives as we see fit. Something kind of like Fafhrd and the Grey Mouser, but with a little bit less, heroics. Because those two, they're thieves, but they're not, bad guys, per se. Which, again, with a technically evil campaign, you don't necessarily have to be bad guys. It's more that you're selfish. So, and you definitely wouldn't think of yourselves as bad guys, because again, that's self-identifying as evil. And then the last way I can think of that would bring evil characters aligned with each other would be a situation like the Suicide Squad. And there's been tons of fantasy variations on the Suicide Squad from a lot of different people. Matt Colville talks about this in his video. And basically, for anyone unfamiliar with the Suicide Squad, they are super criminals in the DC universe who are brought together by Amanda Waller from Argus, Checkmate, whichever organization from whatever timeline you're in. She brings them together to do basically classified black ops suicide missions on behalf of the United States government. And if they survive, they get reduced sentences just as a reward for their service to the government. And if they fall out of line or go into business for themselves, she's got each of them wired with a bomb in their heads. And if they go off script, she kills them. And, if they die during the mission, they die during the mission. And then, instead of it being, checkmate soldiers who were trying to carry out this secret operation in Bialia, it's just Bronze Tiger, Deadshot, and Captain Boomerang. And, they're known bad guys anyway, so the U.S. government can be like, no, they were in business for themselves. We don't know about that. But what ties them together is, one, they want reduced sentences, and two, they don't want to die. Once they agree to it, they've got a bomb strapped to the back of their head, and at that point, they want to live so that they can enjoy that reduced sentence. So yeah. The way you bind your players together here is through some kind of code of honor or common brotherhood, some kind of governmental structure that everyone falls under, a shared goal, or a shared impending doom. Or you could, weave a couple of these together. Let's say they're all members of the Assassin's Guild, and they have all been revealed as members of the Assassin's Guild by a mole within the guild. So in this situation, they're all kind of, honor bound to, this code that they swore allegiance to. And let's say for, the sake of argument, they're all, they all feel the same way about the code. But they have been put out by their own order. They've been betrayed. And so now not only does the guild think of them as traitors, but other people now know that they're assassins. Then you have characters who are bound by brotherhood, but they're also now bound by the common goal of clear our names and get revenge on the SOB who outed us and tried to make our order think we're traitors. Which may lead to, let's take over the guild, or let's go to another town and form our own guild. All kinds of things that you could do there. And, even if you don't want to have that structure there, you could, everyone's got a common goal based on an impending doom, like a Suicide Squad type situation. So, now that you have an idea of what kinds of things can bind your characters together and how to get them to cooperate, even though they're evil and all ultimately self-interested, how do you make this work as beyond one session or beyond half of a session? How do you make it work? And yes, Elfie, to acknowledge your comment here, and to do my Zangief voice, just because you're a bad guy does not make you a bad guy. So yes, there we go. Think of that as the motto of your all-evil campaign. But, again, I'm going to reiterate this because when it comes to a game like this, a situation where everyone is playing evil, self-interested characters, what you're talking about is a role-play heavy campaign. There's no other way to get around this. You're gonna have to do some heavy roleplay to figure stuff out like this. So if that's not your bag, your evil party will get along just fine as long as everyone's okay with just kind of being murder hobos. You can explore and fight all you want, but if you don't want to put in the work, everyone's just going to be murder hobos, basically. And there's nothing wrong with that, necessarily. There's a constructive way to be a murder hobo, but just know that's what you're signing up for in that situation. So, if roleplay is not a dirty word to you, let's talk about how and why. So, in order for this intricate interweaving of all of these characters' goals and individual desires with the common goal, the common structure, whatever it is that has bound them together in this adventure, all members of the party need to have a crystal clear idea of who they are and what they want. Players who are not good about giving your GMs backstories, that's not going to fly in the All Evil campaign. You need to know who you are and what you want. And your GM needs to know who you are and what you want. So really do some thinking about that. Get in the mind of your character. Think about who they are, what they want, what they're willing to do to get it, and their devotion to law, rules, regulations, codes of honor, ethics, all that stuff. And have that down pat so you know what to do in these situations. You also need to pay attention during roleplay. And you need to have conversations with the other members of the party, because you also need to have some kind of knowledge or understanding or idea of what the other players want. Because as self-interested characters, you need to know who wants what, how do these goals align with your goals, when do you need to be watching your back to make sure no one's sticking a knife in it, and when do you need to know to stick a knife in someone else's back? Let's go back to the Brotherhood of Assassins, who have been revealed to the public and framed as traitors amongst their order. Let's say you've got someone who... let's say you have a fighter, in this case, who's... let's say his ultimate goal is to win the affections of one of the local tavern wenches. He's a simple man. And one of the other party members, also has his eye on that tavern wench. So, in the event that, this comes up, and these players are, having this confrontation over, which one of us is going to pursue this woman, who, trying to outdo each other, trying to win her affection, that kind of stuff. Would it be something that would turn violent? Is this something you're willing to kill over? What are you going to do if, let's say, you're the fighter and the wizard in the party the assassin wizard, is a little bit more charming than you, and she falls for him rather than you. Is that something you're willing to let go and move past? Or is her affection so important to your character that you're willing to kill that wizard? That's something that, well, for one thing, needs to be worked out by players, because if you create a character who's single-mindedly in love with this tavern wench, and then one of the other players at the table goes, oh yeah, I'm after her too, is that player trying to start something? Like, in that situation, is that player trying to sabotage your character, or just trying to be kind of a dick, or, whatever the situation is. But, let's say you guys agreed upon that as a source of conflict between your characters. Your characters knew each other in the past, you both knew this girl, and you both had feelings for her. Because that could happen. That could be a situation that your characters run into. Knowing how your characters interact with each other, and how they interact with this woman, and how she feels about your characters, paying attention in these role-playing situations is going to be critical to that storyline that you're trying to set up. And if you're not paying attention, or you're not trying, as far as roleplay goes, it's going to fall flat. And it's going to feel weird. Or let's say you misinterpret the way things are going, and you create some real life animosity between yourself and the other player over this imaginary woman. These are situations that need to be addressed carefully with the game. And you need to know how your characters feel about that. And if ultimately one of you is going to end up with her and the other one isn't, out of game, it feels weird to say this, but you have to make sure that everyone, leaves the table happy, or at least resigned to what's going to happen. Excuse me. And, make sure that there's no real animosity there. Because that's what kills games more than anything else, is generating genuine hatred. And it can happen sometimes, even in, non-evil campaigns. I got so into role-playing one time that I got super mad at Ashley, one of my former players, in real life, over something that her character did to my character in-game. And now that I think back on it, that moment is my favorite D&D moment of all time. This was the big betrayal that I've talked about. And maybe I'll talk about it again someday. But, I was so into character and so into what was going on at that point that I got legitimately mad at Ashley the person, not her character. So, again, while so much of, playing in a situation like this, while so much of it is, wrapped up in being invested in who your character is and what they want, remember to keep a degree of separation there. I'll put it that way. Don't get so involved that you get mad at the outcomes of a fake thing where ultimately you're playing make-believe with your friends while you're drinking and eating pizza. So, roleplay is very important, though. And so, if you're the type of person who stacks dice waiting for combat, you're going to find that in a campaign like this, you're going to get bored very quickly. Or you're going to start creating distractions to alleviate your boredom. So yeah, that, really is all there is to it as far as playing an evil campaign, creating evil characters, and having them interact with each other. in a gaming situation. Now, do I recommend doing this? No. Off the bat, no. I don't recommend doing this. Because let's say you're the GM in this situation. If I found myself in this situation and I approached my players and said, let's do an all-evil campaign. It's going to be very much me imposing my will upon them and limiting the options that they have as role players. And ultimately, I don't want to do that. As much as I might want to ban the bard from my table, I'm half joking about that, but as much as I might want to ban the bard from my table, that might upset one of my players. Maybe they want to play a bard. And while I generally find bards annoying because of the way that people think they have to play them, I'll allow them to play a bard, even if I don't want to deal with bard shit. I'll let them do it. And if they're too obnoxious, I'll pull them aside and say, hey, look, we need to talk about this. You're being distracting. Or just straight up, you're irritating me. I'm not above saying that to a player. I'm really not above saying that to anyone. Except maybe my boss. Even then, I'm... There have been times, let me put it that way. But you as the GM don't want to take options off the table for your players. Unless everyone agrees to it. If you say, how would you guys feel about an all-evil campaign? If everyone at the table is like, yeah, that sounds great. Awesome, let's do it. Then, sure. But that kind of consensus is going to be very hard to gather because it's taking options away. And you never know which player at the table is thinking, I really want to do the archetypical, I think I was right the first time. I want to be Paladin McPaladin Pants, basically. Sir Paladin McPaladin Pants. Lawful good paladin of smiting evil. People get the impulse sometimes. Maybe someone wants to be a life domain cleric, or, they really just want to be a good guy. The Superman fan at the table, if I'm at your table, I love Superman. They want to give that a swing. They want to see if they can be a very goody two-shoes good character, a real Boy Scout, and still make him interesting and fun to play with. You never know when that could pop up. So, someone might... It's likely that someone will object to, I don't want to play all evil characters. Also, another reason why I don't necessarily recommend this. When it comes to evil characters, there's going to be a lot of... You're going to have to go over a lot in Session 0 as far as, all right, let's get this out of the way. We're all evil. So, are we okay with, gratuitous blood and violence? Are we okay with some, you might even have the conversation, are we okay with sexual violence happening in our game? Personally, I don't want to roleplay that. But if someone wants to, you gotta get that out there. You have to make sure people aren't going to be squeamish about it. Because if people end up being squeamish, then you're not really playing bad guys, are you? I mean, yeah, you can be playing selfish, self-interested characters, but if you're not doing bad guy stuff, then what's the point? Why take those options off the table if you're not gonna, I don't know, kill someone who didn't necessarily deserve to be killed? Or torture the last enemy? Isn't that half the reason why you wanted to do this? You've got that last enemy there, and, usually the paladin's like, you can't torture him. But at this point, the paladin is Lord Dark Annihilator, the paladin of conquest. So he's like first in line. He's got his dagger. He's cast heat metal on it, or he's had the druid cast heat metal on it. And he's like, I'll get him to talk. So if people aren't comfortable with that, then you might want to consider something else. Again, maybe I'm just a psychopath. But, when I think about what an evil campaign entails, it's a lot of grisly stuff. A lot of stuff you might not be comfortable with, or someone might not be comfortable with. So, again, I don't like this idea that you start a game and something comes up and someone in the middle of the game goes, no, I'm not into that. That all needs to be discussed beforehand. You need to come into the game knowing, bad stuff can happen here. Or gory, grisly, uncomfortable, skin-crawling stuff can happen in this game. And I want to role-play with the implications of what my character's reaction would be to that. That has to be decided before the game starts. And once you're in it, you're in it. That's the situation you're in. You can't back out at that point. So that needs to be discussed before you start. And it's important to have that discussion. Because at some point, if, you're not honest about what bothers you, you're going to create a problem at the table. So be open and honest about that stuff. And also, the reason I don't recommend it is it's so difficult to create a situation where people aren't just going to end up being bored of playing the same character over and over and over. How many heists can you commit before you're like, okay, the first 3 were fun. We've done 6 now, and it's the same. We're doing the same thing every week. Or how many murders can we commit and then, frame a local politician for? So you have to be really creative and create a fascinating situation that your players are going to be constantly, wanting to come back to. Which is a challenge for all GMs, but especially in a very limited environment like this. So keep that stuff in mind. If you have a great idea and your players are into it and everyone's down to, do some nasty stuff to some characters, go for it. I mean, you've heard me talk a little bit about how to make that work. Go for it. And have fun. And, if someone approached me with a situation like that, I'd be down for it. I'd be down to run something like that. But I'd have to have the players' commitment to it, because I, as the GM, committed to, creating the adventure for them. So they got to be committed to see it through. Otherwise, I'm going to be pissed, because they didn't let me get to my cool thing that I was going to have them do, where they end up in a showdown with the head of the Assassin's Guild that betrayed them, and find out that he was blackmailed by someone else, and the conspiracy runs deeper. So, yeah. Be committed to it. And have a cool idea that will encourage your players to be committed to it. And remember not to let your actions in-game affect your attitude towards each other out of game. Put your cards on the table as far as, hey, my character might do something a little bit heelish or a little bit crappy to your character. No hard feelings. Pre-apologize. We're playing shady characters, they're going to do shady things. As long as that's good, then you're good to go. And have fun doing it. And, it's explore whatever you want to explore with D&D. That's, ultimately that's what we're here for, to, tell interesting stories and have fun. So if that's fun, have your fun. So yeah, that's going to do it for tonight's show. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Next week, not sure what we're going to do. Might finally talk about that Deadlands one-shot, but I might actually not do that since I'm running it at a convention, and I don't want to spoil any of what I've got going on. Next week, we'll probably do a little bit more painting, and I'll let you guys know what we'll be talking about then. So until next time, whether you rolled a 1 or a 20, I'm so glad that you rolled your bones with me, Ryan Howard, and I'll see you next time.